Welcome to this monthly edition of Shively and Shoulders, and I'm proud to say that we got Pat out of work release just in time for this show. Pat, glad to have you back.
Your Honor, it is always good to see you for this union of great minds. Hats off to Channel 9 for retreading this version of Antiques Roadshow.
Well, you say great minds, but they're not at this table yet, but we do have some great minds as our guests.
And you and I are students of political science. We will be schooled today.
No, I was a business major.
Really?
I learned something that I could make money with.
So you went to vocational school while I treasure the humanities, the arts, literature,
All right.
those kind of things that give fabric to our otherwise boring lives. But you know what?
What's that?
We have two political science professors here today because one of the candidates, they should be here. One of them politely declined. Is it because of something you said?
Not what I said. Stay tuned. We're taking a look at the May 2nd primaries for mayor. In the Republican primary, it's Cheryl Musgrave running against Natalie Rauscher. On the Democratic side, Stephanie Terry is running uncontested. And we're joined by two brilliant minds in the world of political prognostications.
You mean we're not the brilliant minds?
You got it. You're finally learning something.
Okay. All right.
Dr. Matt Hanka from USI.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And Dr. Robert Dion from
Dion rhymes with lion.
That's right.
And he was a frequent guest on our program.
Which shows his age because we've been off the air for a number of years.
And why is it he hasn't aged? And
you have.
Yes.
Welcome, doctors one and all.
Thank you.
We are great. It is
you.
great to have you. Since we don't have candidates, you're our best next replacements. Let's talk about this. I think this is historic. People that have lived in Evansville their whole lives. The thought that we will have, no matter how it comes out, a woman as the chief executive of this town, I think is very exciting. You all remember Estelle Moss. You remember Shirley Jean Cox, Betty Knight Smith, Betty Lou Jarbo. We've had women in elected office, but we haven't had one run the city. Thoughts?
It's historic. The fact that it's about time to see a female mayor leading our city, it's going to provide a unique and additional perspective, and we're going to look at a lot of the issues differently as a result. So it's very exciting, and the people should be really pleased and happy for their city that they're going to elect the first female mayor in history.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I've taught a course on women in politics for years now. One of the things that's interesting is that women don't necessarily legislate in a different way. I don't think a woman mayor will fill a pothole any differently than a man. On the other hand, there's a really powerful symbolic message that comes from having a woman as the chief executive. And there's never been one before. There's going to be a woman's face on that wall when they go up to City Hall. So it's a huge step forward for our city and its history. We've never had a woman governor, and that may well happen.
That may well happen as well.
Well, and you look across the country. Evansville is usually about 10 years behind the coast, but I mean, they're the former mayor of Chicago, a lot of major cities in the U.S., right. Atlanta, I mean, you can go on and on and on, have had women mayors. I just think maybe it makes a progressive statement in an otherwise, shall we say, conservative town.
Yes, it makes it. We're still seeing this disconnect between the percentage of the population that's women and those that seek elective office. Some legislatures, I know not at cities, rank in the 20%. And so that's a huge gap. And I don't have the stats on how many of our cities' mayors are led by females, but this closes that gap and makes it consistent with the representation in our population.
I just read a column in the Indianapolis Star that said over the entire country, only 23% of the city mayors are female.
Okay, 23%.
Huh.
So.
Well, let's get into where we're going. It's pretty sure that Stephanie's going to win the Democratic side, that the Republican primary is the interesting one. Do you all think, let me just put it this way, we all remember the Winesapple Rick Davis. Rick declares, Winesapple hadn't said yet. Boom, fast forward. Cheryl declares, Lloyd Winnicky hadn't said whether he's running or not. It
Right.
split the Dems,
Right.
Lloyd wins. Are we going to see redux? Is it a repeat, or are we living in different times? Either one of you.
It's going to be interesting because what Mayor Winnicky is doing right now is he's putting his establishment, he's putting his fundraising behind Natalie Rauscher. Natalie Racher doesn't have the experience or the expertise, if you will, or a lot of that the way the Commissioner Musgrave has. So it's going to be interesting decision he has to make if Musgrave wins the primary. Does he put his political capital behind her despite the differences, or does he stay out of it? This is not the first time we've seen this playbook with Winicky supporting a candidate that Musgrave beat in an election. We go back to the 2016 county commissioner race, where Cheryl beat the opponent by 11.5 points.
Exactly.
And this is an enthusiastic public posturing of support for this candidate that ran against Cheryl Musgrave in 2016, and what we're seeing right now. So if Natalie Racher isn't the winner, that's going to be an interesting thing that the Winicky and that a political establishment circle is going to have to deal with. And for someone who is 12 years as mayor, whether it's important to him or not, legacy matters in terms of what his...
Well, let me ask you, Dr. Dion. Lloyd Winicky has been a great mayor, great public servant, and he has strongly endorsed Natalie Racher. But does that really... Sure, it means something, but can that alone take Natalie across the finish line?
Well, we're about to find out in a matter of days. I think it's interesting that you mentioned the mayor, because I think we could stipulate that if Lloyd Winicky ran for re-election, he'd be the prohibitive favorite.
Absolutely.
I mean, it would be a...
You guys we wouldn't invite you guys to the show.
And I don't think Stephanie Terry would be running.
No, so there's a great deal of goodwill behind Lloyd Winicky, and he's got a record of achievement and a lot of people who like him. And so what he's done is he said, if you like me, you should love Natalie Racher. And we're about to find out whether that rubs off.
But your studies of either local or state and national elections, does that get the job done?
Dr. Hanka mentioned experience. Natalie Racher has never been elected to office. Musgrave looks like she has plenty of money to get her message across. She's got name recognition as a result of having been around and involved in politics. So she's got some natural advantages. It's a terrific advantage to have the blessing of Lloyd Winicky, but I'm not sure that I think it makes it competitive, but I think it's probably fair to say that Musgrave has a lot of natural advantages.
Let me shift real quick. Sorry, Pat.
Go ahead.
But yes, Cheryl's well known. But the word on the street from some folks, and they may have a bias, whatever, say yes, she's well known, but she has high negatives. Is that true, or what?
There would be a lot of people who would go around town who have expressed some concerns and reservation about Commissioner Musgrave's style and temperament and approach to handling issues with respect to consensus and collaboration. So she's going to probably have to fight off a lot of that. But there's a lot of people who do look at results, and she has proven and shown some results. And I think those who may have opposed her, whether it's in the primary or general, are going to have to be careful of that message of, well, we don't like her, resisting any kind of thing to somehow not come to fruition. You know, if they put their hand to the head of the sand to sort of use a formal expression, you know, we're not in favor of her, we'll just hope she goes away. That can't be a strategy that voters or even the Democratic campaign can use, because she has proven herself through all these elections that she's won.
You know who has sky-high negatives is Mitch McConnell, and he gets reelected every 6 years. The people of the Commonwealth, they don't want to spend time with him, but they're happy to have him.
I probably can't use this language on public television, but he may be a SOB, but he's our SOB.
That's exactly it.
And there's a lot of Republicans. Republicans fall in line. Democrats fall in love. So there's going to be a little of that at play, where Republicans will remember the work that Musgrave's done.
Sure.
Yeah.
But in a primary, the voter who comes out because there's a president, there's a governor, there's the general voter, 30% far left, 30% far right, they're going to vote any time and every time. Primaries don't bring those voters out.
No.
In a Republican primary, let's keep in mind, I think I read in the paper that the county chair, the Republican county chair, is not supporting Cheryl Musgrave. Am I right about that?
I think you are right, yeah.
The sitting mayor is not.
Right.
And so, and unless I'm wrong on this, Cheryl's wins have always been county-wide races.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
The only time she really ran in what was a city kind of thing against Gail Reekin in a legislative race where she didn't have that county buffer,
Right.
she got whooped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm
She
wondering,
lost.
what?
I would think she really got whooped, but she lost.
She lost. So I'm wondering if you got a divided party, only those kind of voters who come out because they're coming out to vote for somebody, and you don't have that county buffer, I think this is closer than we're all acting like.
Well, you're right that there's a lot of people who have a history of having voted for Cheryl who can't vote in this election.
Absolutely. That whole donut around it, which is solid Republican. There's people on the county council that have died, but they still get elected and are filling seats because they're out there in the county. So I'm just kind of wondering,
It's a fair point. Yeah, it's a fair point in the sense that she hasn't had that success in city limits that she has with her other
and you
county
got the
races.
Winnicky. Obviously, the Winnicky machine has raised cash. I've seen rashers up on television.
Right.
That is not the normal
For a
place
primary.
for a primary challenger here.
That's right.
So I mean, there's signs, I would say, that there is some momentum there. Now, listen, Cheryl has won every race she's ever run except
That one.
the Rican.
Except that one.
And so who knows? Well, now when Les and I were growing up, precinct politics mattered.
Right.
Ward leaders mattered. People knocking on your door telling you, now you know the election's on Tuesday.
Right.
And in those days, we used to run the city and the Democratic Party because we could count on the 6th and the 4th wards. The Republicans would carry the 1st, and all we had to do was hold our own in 2, 3, and 5.
Right.
I don't have a sense that it breaks that way anymore. Have you guys looked at that?
Well, we're living under newly drawn lines.
Right,
I mean,
right.
just in the last session of the city council. So everybody's sort of facing a new world. I don't think every single ward was changed, but and then in both parties, I don't think the precinct organization is what it used to be.
And now we've gone to voting
Voting
centers.
That's right.
The precinct organization has really fallen apart.
Yeah, I don't even know if I have a precinct committeeman,
Yeah.
I don't know who it is. I don't think it matters anymore. I think everything is now electronic.
Yeah.
And so those kind of ward politics are a thing of the past.
Yeah.
So what do you got to do now to get elected?
It actually, it's an interesting thing because it opens the door wide for a candidate-driven organization with volunteer muscle, shoe leather, people making phone calls, people going door to door. Especially in a primary, in a municipal year, you're looking at very low turnout. So it doesn't take much to move the needle. But you're right, it's fun to use the word machine, but machines are almost a thing of the past at this point. What you have is organizations that fall in line behind a particular person, and they want that person to be elected. And I'm not sure which of the two women on the Republican side has the bigger personal following at this point.
Let me ask you this. Newt Gingrich was interviewed not too long ago about some of the problems the Republican Party was having in terms of winning elections. And he made this comment, and I really didn't get it at first, and I thought about it. He said, Republicans are all, in an election, are all consumed by the campaign, the ads, the placement. Democrats are all consumed by voter turnout, getting people to the polls. And kind of backing up what you said, what we talked about a while ago,
Yeah.
in a citywide, and this city isn't that big.
Yeah.
You could literally knock on almost every door to get the job done.
You can.
Isn't really going to be the candidate that has the machine, the organization to get the vote out. It's going to. I don't care how good the commercials are.
Yeah.
I don't care if there's an FOP endorsement.
Yeah.
It's whoever can get the vote out.
And I think that matters. You're going to see a lot of that, especially in a city of 120,000 people. Yes, that's going to, a lot of people when you are in Evansville. That is going to make a difference. And so Natalie has, I believe she's a member of the junior league or runs that. So a lot of the constituencies that support that and her alliance with that, that's going to help along with other things. You've seen Stephanie Terry, I've seen on Facebook a lot of campaign organization events. Right. So if that shoe leather, if people are hitting the pavement, that's going to matter, and that might be something that helps a Natalie Racier if she's got people following. But obviously, you got to get those folks to vote.
I'm a believer in radio and print and electronic advertising, but there's a point of diminishing returns. I mean, having 1 million or 2 million or 3 million might not get you there if you don't have the people on the ground making the phone calls and going door to door. When I teach my students, I always say you don't necessarily have to have more money, you just have to have enough money.
Exactly.
And
Good point.
repetition is important, but seeing the same ad 100 times may not make you want to vote for somebody. But if you know who the candidates are and where they stand,
Right.
you can make an informed choice.
Let me ask you, the country is polarized big time. One of the heroes of Les's former party, before he had to be a neutral judge, is Marjorie Taylor Greene. The MAGA crowd with the charlatan who was just in court being arraigned this week.
Right.
My question is, I haven't seen, well, when Donald Trump came here, there was standing room, they were out in the street. Clearly, that would be people from out of town too, but clearly there's that base. I haven't seen in this primary overtly, and if you think about primary and rabid voters, they're the ones that vote. I haven't seen a direct appeal. I've seen Cheryl talk about law and order, which
I think they're both talking
on
about
the comrade's shoulders hears as a dog whistle, but I haven't seen either one of them go for the Trump vote. I don't know how else to say that. I don't know if you two study that, but do you see an overt request that I'm Donald's choice anyway?
I haven't seen it in this one, and one thing could happen if Natalie Rasher has been chosen by the Winnicky establishment to be the candidate for the Republican nominee. Winnicky, if you recall, Winnicky had a hands-off approach.
He left
distanced
town
himself.
when the Donald
Yes, we
came.
know that in 2016
Yeah.
when he came. So he's had no affinity for Donald Trump. So that could have some of that into play, that maybe the Republicans who are in this are keeping their distance. It's possible we could see more of that in play in the general election, but I haven't seen. I've seen it kind of, okay, you got the establishment behind one candidate, you have someone who's proven, and they're just sort of flexing the muscles to show. So yeah, I'm not sure if you'll see it in the remaining of the weeks of the primary.
There was a forum recently, and Commissioner Musgrave and the other candidates were asked what they thought about Donald Trump, and she said,
which she?
Commissioner Musgrave. Sorry, that's right, because they're all women. And all three candidates were there, which made it interesting. She said that she thought Donald Trump had a terrific record as president, and she will always be thankful for him for making abortion illegal in the United States. So she at least made that statement, which I think speaks to a large constituency on the Republican side.
We have the largest right to life banquet in the United States,
Right.
I'm told. Did Rasher comment on that question?
I don't recall her embracing him as fully, yeah.
I would think that'd be a strategy in a primary here, knowing that that's the voter you got to get out, that there'd be more play for Donald here, but I don't know.
It's a good point. You wonder if it's one side's looking beyond May 2nd to a degree and thinking of an overall strategy. But yeah, if you're going to try to count up the votes, that makes sense.
What is the impact of endorsements? Natalie, of course, received the endorsement of the mayor,
Right.
but he's pushing her hard and coaching her every day. But Cheryl's received an endorsement by the FOP, the newly elected prosecutor,
Right,
Mitch Daniels.
right. The
Sarah, thank
builders.
you for that information.
The builders.
The Builders Association, yeah. So, are they going to play? Let me ask a more general question. Do voters really sit down and say, well, I really like Governor Daniels. If Governor Daniels says this candidate, is that going to motivate voters?
Well, the basic political science of a primary is you can't go in there and vote party because everybody's in the same
Right,
party.
exactly.
So you have to have something to help
Right,
you make
right,
sense of it. And those kind of things are little small pieces of the puzzle that could make a difference. When the big power players are weighing in and saying this is the person we prefer, it could make a difference, especially in a close race when there's low turnout.
You both teach the nation's greatest resource, our young people, on a daily basis. You both teach political science. Are you getting a sense that the young people, our college kids in this town, are invested in this race?
In my class is not so much. I teach an intro American government class, and sometimes I'm showing some things that are happening locally. I think we're up against a younger electorate that isn't always motivated to participate. But I always try to glean that these candidates look for those issues that the voters want. And if voters are coming out in certain demographics, like the 50 and older, senior citizens, that's where we see in our politics that government and policy comes out of a lot of that. So if young people want to influence it, they need to vote and be active in the process. So I try to encourage that as much as possible.
We have a lot of local students at the University of Evansville, and of course the students who take my classes are self-selected. They're very interested in politics, and we have students who are very heavily involved in both parties, and they do ask questions about this year's race because there's change in the air. I mean, if you're 18, 19 years old and Lloyd Winnecke's been mayor for 12 of those years, Evansville's about to turn a corner. I don't know what direction it's going to be, but we're going to have a woman mayor. We may elect a Democrat for the first time in a long time. We may have an African American running the city of Evansville, the third largest city in the state. So I think young people those who are interested in politics are sort of paying attention, not so much yet because it's the primary, but boy, by this fall, it'll be interesting to see young people getting involved.
Let me ask you this. This is a question is solely involved in this race. And it's maybe the elephant, excuse the term, in the room.
Or the donkey.
But in your analysis of what's going on in this primary, the battle between Musgrave and Rusher, and the position Mayor Winnecke has taken publicly, what's the source of the rift?
Yeah.
What created this fissure between these two candidates that have been politically successful locally,
right,
and they're both Republicans? What's the source of that?
I don't know, so I'm off the hook.
And it's hard to tell. I think it's been reported that Cheryl was appointed to a commission, maybe it was the redevelopment commission, and maybe some of her decisions were viewed by Winnecke as not being friendly to the administration. I think it was words to that effect. But they've known each other a long time. They're contemporaries, and some of Winnecke's staff people are contemporaries, and so whatever this rift is, and like Dr. Dion, I don't know, but it's important that whatever outcome it is, that Winnecke and the establishment have some sort of long-term view that this helps Winnecke's legacy by supporting, if Cheryl Musgrave was the nominee, to support some aspects or come to some peace-offering agreement that one person's legacy, if Musgrave does things in her first year, that it doesn't undermine what Winnecke did in his 12 years.
In our final minute, your prognosticators, handicappers, who are we going to have a choice between in the fall, and who's going to win? Professor.
Commissioner Musgrave is going to win.
Ultimately, she's going to win the primary and the mayoral.
She's going to win the primary. In terms of the general election, I think Councilman Terry is a similar situation. She's up against. She does have her experience of her own, but there's going to be a lot of people in this community, I think, who are going to support the Republican candidate. So she's going to have to work hard. But hey, if it's ground level organization, I think she certainly has a shot. I have to kind of let's get through the May primary. It's possible, yeah, but we have to wait and see. I'm very certain that Musgrave is going to win the primary.
Dr. Dion rhymes with lion.
Is it fair to remind you that in 2008 I said that Hillary Clinton would be the nominee of the Democratic Party? So
we did want to remind you.
And you were right. No, wait.
I was wrong that year.
In 2008. No, yeah.
So it's a tough one. I think Musgrave probably has the edge in the primary. I think it's a jump ball in the fall, and I think there's a desire among Democrats to elect a mayor because they've been out of power for so long. And if the primary leaves a scar, then the Democrats have a very good chance. So
Jump ball in the fall. There's no better line.
That's a great way to, unfortunately, have to end this dialogue. Gentlemen, appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
Hope to have you guys back soon.
Sure.
And for both of you being our guests today, you got free parking.
Well, thank you.
Well, Judge?
Yes, sir.
Great guests.
Great
Good
guests.
discussion. I think instead of 30 minutes, we ought to be a 3-hour program.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I could stand 3 hours with you, Patrick. No offense. I learned a lot from from their comments and as you use your term, handicapping the race. And one thing we sort of didn't talk enough about was Stephanie Terry's chances. I think she's a strong candidate, and regardless who the Republicans nominate, they will have a battle in front of them.
Well, she's proven she's a proven vote getter.
Exactly.
And then she runs in the county which is not known for its African American population, and she's been elected in the county races. So, which is not to say that African Americans are automatically going to vote for her. She'll have to work for every vote she gets, but I actually like her chances a lot. We've all forgotten that Lloyd Winnicky was kind of a blip on the overall political landscape, which had Democrats, Lloyd, Democrat, you know what I'm saying here.
Well, one thing that's changed Evansville, given the demographics now, is annexation has changed. Stephanie also has contact through her work with SEMO.
Children's Museum, absolutely.
She'll have some great contacts there.
Well, I think you and I grew up when the Central Committee was the strong Central Committees in those organizations. You used to call him Frankie the Deuce. Frank McDonald II kind of broke that apart, ran his own deals separate from the other candidates.
He was the chair of the Alpha chapter of the Frankie the Deuce political party.
So anymore, the candidate kind of has to build that organization.
Exactly.
The Central Committee's there, but they're not the force they used to be. It'll be interesting to see if Stephanie Terry can put a Democratic Party that has been out of power in the county, well, we had a little majority for a while, and the city together, because that's what it'll take.
We won't know until that first Tuesday in May.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll see you next month. Take care.